So kind of in a fun, different way of doing an interview, I thought that I would just go ahead and film myself asking you a few questions and then have you shoot me a video response. I just kind of want to start by letting everyone know the story of how we met. So James and I met when we were working for Carlos Rolón, and we were both doing some contracted work, helping Carlos work on his paintings and various projects. So yeah, we worked together over the course of, I would say, 6 to 8 months, and it was so much fun. We just basically spent the whole time laughing and having a great time. And so James and I ended up becoming really good friends, and we were actually each other's date for Art Expo Chicago, and that was amazing. James' outfit was on fire. So today I wanted to enlighten our audience a little bit about what it means to relate to your gender in a different way. I feel like our society has a lot of questions surrounding this. This mindset and this awareness has changed over the past 50 years, and absolutely very much in the past 20 to 30 years. So I would love for you today, James, to enlighten the audience on your personal story. The reason why I wanted to paint this portrait of James is first, above all, because I find him to be immensely beautiful. And I've always been very attracted to James' energy. So James, let's go ahead and go through some questions.
All right, Julia. Well, this is my first video I've ever recorded, I believe, so I'm gonna do my best here. I thought it would be nice to give you a little bit of shots while I'm getting ready. So, you know, I have myself prepared here at my painting station with my tea, and then I'll answer your questions and we'll see how that goes. But I hope you're doing well. I guess let's get into this. This is what we're going for. So I'm going for very much like a online cam girl. She's working for the money, showing her wardrobe. You know, I hope that's not too risque, but I thought this could be fun. I have your video set up here. I'm just gonna watch it, and as you said, pause after each question and answer it.
So my first question is, when in your life did you realize that you connected more with a feminine side? How old were you? And do you remember what that felt like, that initial moment? Or was it a series of moments leading up to a realization? And then how did you carry out that side of yourself?
It's a bit of a trick question because the realization that I was attracted to femininity and felt connected with it was much later than when I began connecting with it one-on-one, in the way that I carried myself and the way that I behaved and the friends that I had, the way that we played with each other as children. So as far back as I can remember, I've always connected with little girls, female characters. I can think back to when I would play make-believe, any kind of make-believe scenario with my friends. And I had a mix. When I was a little kid, I had a pretty even mixture of little boys and little girls that I was friends with. I think this was prior to concepts of gender and sexuality even being in anyone's mind. We were all just relating to one another as we were, as taking someone at face value and, oh, do I like this person? Do we like each other? Do we have fun together? Cool. So I remember playing, I was a big nerd, so I remember playing make-believe, mermaids, fantasy characters. I would always be this like elf or ninja or like wizard, or I should say witch. And when I was playing, and I remember playing with little boys, they would always be this like male character, and I would always be some kind of like female enchantress, I would say. And no one thought anything of it. Playing video games, I would always make female characters. I remember playing dress up. doing my makeup with my mom's makeup, sneaking into her bathroom with my sister. My sister would put on my dad's clothes, I would put on my mom's clothes. So it's always been a part of my life, and I never questioned it or thought of it as anything unique or different than other people until I think those ideologies were passed down from the previous generation. My friends, my schoolmates, they began to have that viewpoint indoctrinated within them, and of course carried it on. So then that's where my life got significantly harder as a kid. That's where I started to get severely bullied and started to internalize a lot of shame as it related to my femininity and sexuality. So that period of my life is one of the darkest periods of my life, and it wasn't until I was able to branch out on my own, move into a city really, honestly in the last 5 years or so, that I have been able to reconnect with that femininity that I thrive on and begin to flourish again. What it felt like to begin to re-engage with my femininity: terror, confusion, anguish, but also excitement. It's a complicated feeling because I think about that time period as re-engaging with my femininity, re-examining my identity as very tumultuous, a very painful time, undigging a lot of painful emotions, and confronting them. So the realization, what it felt like, it wasn't a fun realization, but it was a necessary realization. And now I really don't have any associations of shame with my femininity. I feel very empowered with it. I feel emboldened spiritually, physically. I used to walk around with so many feelings of dysmorphia with my body, not so much with gender, mostly feeling that I wasn't physically fit enough, feeling that my body wasn't correct. But it was because I was trying to live up to a strict expectation of masculinity that I would never be comfortable with. I think the concept of femininity for me is a secondary association that's coming along with all of the things that I happen to be interested in. For me, what's happening here isn't about masculinity versus femininity. It's just feeling comfortable being what I am and being drawn to what I'm drawn to and engaging with that and trying to free myself of all of the expectations with how it's supposed to be.
And then how did your parents react? Are your parents together? Are they divorced? When you told them and when you came out with this, how did they react? Were they very supportive of it? I think that a lot of people would like to know this side of the story because some parents might not know what to do with that information, or worse, they might reject the child. And I would love to let people out there know that they're not alone in this journey.
Okay, I'm going to answer a few questions here. Are my parents together? No. They separated when I was in my early teens. They're both remarried, and my mom is unfortunately going through her second divorce now, so she's newly single. Hit her up. My dad just remarried to a new lovely woman named Leslie, who has been very supportive to me. Thanks, Leslie. So I have some new stepbrothers too, which I'm having fun with them. I think that they're nice. Anyways, my parents' initial reaction to my identity and its burgeoning state, and when it's begun to be more visual. As I mentioned, when I was a little child, I would always be playing dress up. I was very interested in Barbies, Polly Pockets, stuffed animals, there was some things that were neutral. I mean, I also loved Spider-Man, and would play at the same time with my little Spider-Man doll and my Barbie doll. They were very okay with my expressions of femininity as a child, I think, although I'm sure that they were having discussions of it behind closed doors, but you know, they were trying to let me live. I think that they really, in their, my thought is that from their perspective, they really thought it was just a phase. From what I know as a child, they were pretty supportive of me. Something changed when they first found me, you know, deep in my little internet hole looking at homosexual pornographic images, which, you know, is not a great thing to realize that your teenage child is looking at pornography in any capacity. But I think it was even more shocking for them to find the heinous, truly revolting things that I was able to find on the internet. So when that happened, I do know in my life there was a very definitive shift. No more Polly Pockets, no more Barbies. I remember, now I'm from the countryside of Wisconsin, but the first thing they bought me a gun, they got me baseballs, baseball mitts. I feel like the whole attitude shifted, and it was very much about instilling masculinity and trying to divert me from the tumultuous path I was on. I think shortly after that time period, my parents did get divorced, looping back to that question, which threw my whole life into an imbalance. I think that's a very definitive point where I suddenly became closeted. I had never really considered myself, I didn't think of myself as anything, but when I got reprimanded for all of those things, all of my femininity, you know, being attracted to men, after being reprimanded for that, that's kind of a point in my life. And this was also the same time that my peers were starting to catch on to things and start to make fun of me and bully me pretty heavily. So that's the point in my life where I think about becoming closeted. And I came up through a really harsh Baptist background, so I was very focused on trying to repent and, you know, pray the gay away. This was something I was engaging in personally, in denial about my identity, and I didn't really come to terms with it until I was probably 18 or 19. Around the time I was 20 is when I first came out to both my parents as gay. I don't think it went great, but for my mom it went okay. For my dad, we didn't really talk about it, and that's kind of where it's left with my dad. I'm 26 now, and in the past 5 or 6 years since I came out to him, we don't really talk about it. Although it's slightly getting better, as I mentioned, I have a new stepmom who's very supportive of things, and I think is trying to open up my dad to it, and I'm seeing some progress. But my mom, it's been a roller coaster some periods of times. She's very supportive. She was okay with me being gay, but me being gender queer, non-binary. My mom had some serious issues with seeing me looking like a woman and living in the world more as a woman. And I think she's still a bit uncomfortable with it, but she's a lot better with it now. My sister has always been supportive, love her. And it's been tumultuous. There's been periods of time where I don't talk to my family, and I thought about completely removing myself from my family and running away and blocking their numbers, and I'm glad I didn't do that because I really truly considered it for a while. But now we're here, things are on the up and up.
Okay, so let's fast forward to now. The first thing is you've always wanted to go by the name James, and I'm curious about that because it seems like when you dress up and you actually craft your own outfits, like each outfit actually seems to express a character. For instance, like the geisha type outfit that you wore to Expo with the crying or the jewels coming down your cheeks. Or I remember this one time you had bloody knees when you went out. I thought that was so creative and subversive. So a lot of your themes do tend to be a little bit subversive, a little bit naughty, a little bit on the edge. But then some of your other costumes seem to be a little bit flirty, a little bit feminine. So my question is, why do you still go by the name James? And secondly, because you're taking estrogen supplements, are you looking to transition completely into a woman? Are you looking to also go into surgery or do something more drastic, or are you just looking to kind of soften those edges by taking estrogen supplements? And also, what pronoun do you use for self-identification?
Go back, I feel a absurd stubbornness towards keeping the name and defending the name James that roots back to my childhood. I used to go by Alex. Alexander is my middle name, and my name was Alex Schwab up until probably 2nd grade, and I remember we were doing penmanship courses, learning to write out our full names, and I was confused because everyone had their first name, middle name, last name. Everyone was writing out their names, and I only knew Alex Schwab. And I was like, why do I only have 2 names? My first name and my last name. So when I went to ask my parents about that, that's when the first time that I found out that I had a first name. Alex was my middle name, my first name was James. I feel like there's a part of me that's very concerned with rules and things are supposed to be the way that they're supposed to be. So I just could not handle the concept of my middle name as my first name, and I just knew my name was James. Being a quaint little diva, I refused to respond to Alex anymore. If someone would say Alex, Alex, oh, hey Alex. But then someone says, James, oh, winner. I was like, my name's James, and I made all of my family stop referring to me as Alex. I made them all start referring to me as James, so I threw a huge fit about it. Just fought for it so much. And then when it came to beginning to perform drag, I entered a drag show, and one of the drag queens told me I needed a name to be introduced by. So my first drag name was actually Valencia, based off of the Instagram filter. Which there was a concept there. I thought Instagram filters, they make you more beautiful, they fix out your blemishes, you use them to present the best version of yourself. So I thought, oh, what a fitting name for a drag concept. So my name was Valencia initially, and I like that. I still like it some, but it just felt very uncomfortable for me to be called Valencia for some reason, because I feel like in my heart, I was like, my name's James, don't call me anything but James. I think it might be attributed to the fact that being bullied so much, I was constantly being called things that weren't my name. I wanted to be called James. I was called everything in the book but James. So I don't feel comfortable being called anything but that, because I fought so much for it, and I've was denied being called it for so long. I do identify as non-binary, and trans feminine, which means that somewhere on the gender spectrum I don't really want to be too defined by it or restricted by it, but I do lean more towards the feminine. In terms of estrogen and HRT, human hormone replacement therapy, I'm not currently on it. I was on it for about half a year. A lot of the practices, although they have been researched, of using various hormones and their effects in the body, there's more research to be done, and there's continuously more and more studies that have very troubling health implications for people who are taking many of the drugs that are often prescribed as anti-androgens, and that's the biggest one I'm concerned with. Also, estrogen has some troubling effects on the body that many people aren't aware of, aside from the physical changes. You have a pretty significantly increased risk of blood clot related injuries, things like stroke, aneurysms, heart attacks. Additionally, you have higher risks for developing things like breast cancer. So there's just a lot of concerning things for me, and I'm not currently on it, although I might get back on it in the future. I'm not sure yet. At this point in time, I don't feel like I want to transition to living as a woman. I don't feel like a woman. I don't feel like a man. I don't really feel like any of those concepts I can feel comfortable claiming them. And I feel like at any time in my life where I've really tried to nail it down exactly what I am, I end up limiting myself to the possibilities of what I might be or what I could be. I do think I have a preference towards they and she, although I'm not really bothered too much by people using he, him, his. Although I just don't really think it fits. It just doesn't really make sense for me. So although I'm not personally really offended by it, it's just kind of a perplexing choice for me of the available options. So at this point in my life, I'm preferring to stay away from self-identifying as much as possible, and however the world perceives me with the name James and the way I look, that's kind of up to them, and that's kind of where I'm at.
So with regard to this very particular work, I'm curious about what was going on during the scene. I know that it was kind of cold outside and you had a Santa hat on and platform heels and a very risque hot fire engine red outfit and fishnet stockings. Oh my god, this photo, when I saw it, it actually flashed up on your Instagram and I was like, holy shit. So I took a quick screenshot and I knew this was the one because, not to sound too creepy, but I've been collecting images of James for like, I don't know, probably 4, 5, 6 months trying to find the perfect image. And this just really, really rang perfect for me. So James, can you please tell us the background behind this image? Because I'm in love with it. Mommy ruined XXXmas was the caption.
Mommy did ruin it. Background behind this image. So at my core, I am a bit of an internet troll. I like to be silly. I like to entertain myself by making a fool of myself. I think the background behind this specific image, I woke up after working at design studio, which was very grueling work at times, and I woke up and we had a holiday break for about a week, and I was in my apartment and the sunshine was in my window and I got some good sleep and I was just feeling great. I was enjoying myself. I was dancing around my apartment, listening to Christmas music, getting ready for my trip back to Kokomo, Indiana for the holidays, and I was just really feeling myself and having fun. So the background from this image is I was just being silly in my apartment, dancing around to Mariah Carey's Christmas. That quickly devolved into just being a hoe and being a nasty thought on Instagram, making sure all my coworkers and family see me dancing around in a thong. Things I should never do, but for some reason, a part of me wants to do it.
Also, lastly, what is next for you? And on a kind of side note, you are extremely brave. Your bravery is astounding, and I feel like the world definitely needs more of you. I know it's not easy to completely authentically break down those barriers and be yourself, and also put it out there in the world for everyone to see. So not everyone can do that. So thank you so much, James, for being amazing, beautiful, unique, and also above all being my friend and participating in this project, letting me paint you, and also sharing your words of wisdom with the world.
Where I see myself in the future, girl, I have no clue. Hopefully being able to continue to work on myself and become a version of myself that I love, and love being in the world through that vessel, which has always been my goal, to be in a place where I can continue to be surrounded by and thriving with my fellow queer artists and performers, and just artists and performers of any kind collaborating, helping to make the world a more beautiful place, telling people's stories, telling our own stories. I don't know where I see myself in the future, but I guess I'm a little bit excited to find out.
Where do you see gender identity evolving? How do you see those expressions changing in a historical sense now that we are in 2019?
Honestly, I see two possible options. One, to me, is very idealistic and utopian. And then there's another one that's less optimistic and more pessimistic sounding, but possibly more realistic. The first option is gender boundaries break down. No one cares anymore what gender anyone thinks they are. No one has any pressures about gender. Things like the patriarchal views of women and misogyny break down because we don't have concepts of men or women anymore. We all are just human beings living our life, feeling the best way we can about ourselves, and I think that could be one really idealistic future for gender identity. Another possible and more realistic option for the future, which I'm sad to say, but based on the history of art and how it relates to fashion and expression, we do, from what I know, I'm young, there's a history of gender concepts alternating between more fluid and androgynous and open approaches, and then as a counteraction, unfortunately, tightening up and becoming very strict. So we'll see what happens. I have a fear, especially with the current political climate, that we are already seeing a backlash to the loosening of gender roles and gender expectations, and people exhibiting their freedom and not living in fear. People want them to be in fear again, and I'm seeing that politically, and I do have a fear that that's a future that we could move towards, but I'm hoping we don't, and I guess all we can do is try.
Thank you everyone so much for giving this video a watch, and I really hope that James could answer some questions that you might have about either your own gender expression and evolution, as well as societal gender expression and evolution. Thank you so much, James, from the bottom of my heart for doing this. I love you so much.
Love you too,
and
Julia.
I cannot wait to hear your answers and share your beauty and love with the world.
Aww.
So, all right, see you next time. Bye, guys.
I hope I answered your questions sufficiently, and I hope that there's some useful content. I love you, Julia. Love you, love you, love you. Mwah, 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 mwah.